Hello, everyone. We're going to be getting started momentarily. My name is Stacy Hutchison, and welcome to today's program, Wills, Estates, and Probate Records. I'm joined today by the Assistant Archivist, Maureen Iplensky, along with our special guests, Michele Vaughn, Chester County's Register of Wills and Clerk of the Orphans Court, and her first deputy, Kathleen Finney. Michele and Kate will begin by discussing the role of the Register of Wills Office and the Orphans Court today. Then Maureen will take us through wills and administration files, and I will conclude the presentation with an overview of Orphans Court records here at the archives. Our goal is for you to leave with a deeper understanding of this vital Chester County Row Office and its impact on the lives of Chester County residents, both past and present. If you have any questions during the program, please enter them in the chat box. We will wrap up with a question and answer session at the end. But before we begin, I'd just like to highlight several upcoming programs offered by the Chester County History Center in honor of Women's History Month. On March 4th, Jennifer Linker will explore early American women in science. On March 25th, Jennifer Green will share the story of Chester County's own Dr. Ann Preston. And on March 26th, the History Center's popular walking tour, Fierce, Women of Westchester, returns for its spring season. And now I will turn the program over to Michele and Kate. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you everyone for welcoming us here today. It is my distinct privilege to be here to present to talk about our office, the Register of Wills and Clerk of the Orphans Court. I'm here today with my first deputy, Kathleen Finney, better known as Kate, and the two of us will be walking through for you an overview of the office, some of the improvements we've made over the last few years, and just to give you a good background to become more familiar with our office. So in terms of the agenda here today, I'll give you background on our office, some of the services we provide, what my role is as the Register of Wills, which is rather unique with respect to or in comparison to other row offices here in Chester County, what office records we have in our office, talk a little bit about estates and marriage licenses, some of the advances we've made to date, some of the changes we've made in customer service, and how we keep our records accurate. So our office is rather small. We have 13 people, including myself. Kate is the first deputy. We have 2 clerical supervisors, one for the Register of Wills and one for the Clerk of the Orphans Court. So our office is unique in the sense that I have 2 offices, the Register of Wills and the Clerk of the Orphans Court. The Register of Wills manages everything related to probating of estates and filings related to estates, and the Orphans Court is the official filing office for any adoptions, guardianships, and filings for birth registrations or guardianships of minors and incapacitated persons. And then we also have an account clerk who manages all of the finances related to our office. We have roughly seven support staff, all of whom are cross-trained, and they also clerk in the Orphans Court. So they handle any filings, documenting evidence, swearing in witnesses for the Orphans Court judges here in Chester County. The volume of cases we see every year, we docket an average of 45,000 entries every year and probate 2,000 estates on average. Our largest volume is around marriage licenses. So I mentioned that our principal duty of our Register of Wills office is to probate wills and accept all the filings related to the documentation needed to complete the administration of a decedent's estate. And wills, a decedent can have a will or not have a will, but we still can appoint someone either to appoint a representative for the decedents who die, whether they have a will or don't have a will. My jurisdiction is only Chester County, so the decedent must have been a resident of Chester County at the time of their death. And in addition to that, we also serve as an agent for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for filing and payment of inheritance taxes. I also wanted to mention we are one of the few revenue producing offices in the county. Our office, the Recorder of Deeds, and the Prothonotari's office are the only revenue producing office in the county, and we bring in maybe over $2 million in revenue every year. Now, the clerk of the Orphans Court serves as a filing office. There are Orphans Court judges who are Court of Common Pleas judges, and we in our office accept all the filings, and we are the custodian of all the records. So for any matters involving guardianships, adoptions, any estate litigation, and any other miscellaneous matters related to the Orphans Court and the Register of Wills. And we also issue marriage licenses for Chester County. That falls under the Orphans Court. So some of the services we offered, during COVID, we had to make a number of changes in the way we managed our office by accommodating the number of people. We had to limit the number of people in our office. So we had to adapt and use technology to make some changes in the way we manage the workflow in our office. So today we have appointment scheduling. It's something we introduced during COVID and which we retained. So we have appointment scheduling both for marriage licenses and for probating of estates. Each appointment is 30 minutes. We have a calendar on our website where someone can schedule or cancel or update their appointment. And in addition to our website, we also have a mobile app, which I'll talk about a little later in the program, or by even calling our office. We have extended hours on Wednesday evening for marriage licenses. We are the only Southeastern office, including Philadelphia, that offers extended hours for marriage licenses. And if you are getting married in the state of Pennsylvania, you can get your marriage licenses in any county. So we have attracted a number of people from all over the region to get their marriage license because of the convenience of our evening hours. One other adaptation we made during COVID was the introduction of virtual probates. And we kept this after COVID because we found that it was very convenient for those who were out of state or someone who's disabled or sick and who cannot come into the office. Normally what needs to happen is the executor or executress or administrator needs to come into the office and be sworn in at the counter and bring all of the necessary documentation, the original will, a copy of the death certificate, the check for the probate fees, etc. But now with electronics, with Teams meetings or Zoom, one can, if they have the ability to email and scan, we can do this all virtually. And it has been a very popular process for those who are out of state. We do accept some documents electronically here in our office, some estate-related documents, proof of deposit for minors' funds, and a motion for continuance of court scheduling. We also, and I think this might be interested to those attending here today, we have public computers that are available in our office that are free, that you can conduct your own estate searches without a subscription to Tesco PIN. And there is a system called the Guardianship Tracking System. So if you are a guardian and you need to submit a yearly guardianship report, that can all be submitted online. Again, through our public computers, we offer this in our office so they can submit these reports. So the role of the register. So the Register of Wills is unique in the sense, not just that we have two offices within one, but I have a quasi-judicial role. So if you think of someone like an MDJ who has the ability to hold hearings, so if there is a contest over respective estate or will, and that dispute cannot be resolved among the parties, they can petition the register to hold a hearing. And those hearings are held as bench trials. So I am the one who will admit any evidence. We have a court reporter present. Testimony is taken under oath, which can be helpful for discovery purposes. And they're often preferable to protracted litigation in Orphans Court before a judge and the Court of Common Pleas. If a registrar's decision is appealed, it would be appealed to the Orphans Court. That would be the first level of appeal. And they would start just from the beginning, again, all new testimony, although the transcript of the hearing would be permitted to be shared with the Orphans Court. So there are different types of challenges and different reasons that someone may bring a hearing in front of the register. The first is related to undue influence over the person who is the testator or the person who has passed away. Undue influence where someone has a large personal gain and has a personal relationship with that individual and has a substantial gain in the estate. The second is testamentary capacity, and one might be more familiar with this term as of sound mind. Was the person of sound mind? I will say that capacity to overcome whether someone is of sound mind actually has a very high bar, and it includes the introduction of medical records as well to support the idea that the person was not of sound mind when they signed their will. Any lost or destroyed wills, forgery, if forgery is a case, and then the fitness of the person who's the named executor, who's a man, or the executrix, who is a woman. If they are not fit to serve, then someone else may be appointed in their place. So I think this is an area that is going to interest many of you, and that is how far back do our records go? So we have register wills and Orphans Court documents that date back to 1924. And marriage licenses that date back to 1930. Any records before those years, you can contact this department, the Department of Chester County Archives Department, and our records are in various formats. They're in paper or they're scanned. We did scan all of our microfiche in my first term. That was a project we undertook, and that's completed. So again, you can come into our office and look up that information. What records are available to the public? So all the records in our office are available to the public: register wills, Orphans Court, and marriage licenses. We're open to the public except for any records that are impounded by the court. So adoptions, birth registration, termination of parental rights, guardianships of minors or incapacitated people, those are impounded records, and they are not accessible to the public. And that requires a court order in order to access them. So I wanted to talk about some of our office improvements, our office advancements, and this is just adapting to how the world is changing, how we can use technology, and how we can partner with other departments based on some of the work we do. So the first one I want to talk about is called, we have three things: our guardianship fraud detection program, our mobile app that we launched in 2021, and some of the improvements we've made to customer service. So our guardianship fraud detection program, this is an intergovernmental fraud detection program that we launched in February of 2022 with the Recorder of Deeds office. And this is designed to protect incapacitated seniors and disabled people from falling victim to illegal transfer of their property. So what happens is whenever a person is placed under guardianship care, we provide a copy of that file to the Recorder of Deeds office, and it is stored in a secured database based on where with that person, incapacitated person's name, under that incapacitated person's name. And so on a monthly basis, the recorder of deeds does a sweep of all of the indices, and we have over 500 names in that database today to search for any specific incidents. An incidence would be something, it's an example where the property was transferred through the recorder of deeds related to this incapacitated person and was recorded within the recorder of deeds office. There are certain required procedures to do that. In order for it to be properly transferred, the court appointed guardian needs to be acknowledged by the notary, and the parties involved have to have legal right to transfer the property on behalf of the incapacitated person. So there have been 60 cases where that's happened in the last 5 years. And in no case there was only one case we found where there was malicious intent, where a family member who was appointed as the power of attorney for incapacitated person had tried to transfer the property of that individual, even though they had a legal guardian in place. So the recorder of deeds brought that situation to the attention of the courts. They froze all money that had been exchanged, and the person who did that was arrested, and the legal transfer of the property went through the court-appointed guardian. So it's been a really successful way for us to be proactive in protecting guardians under our care. The next area I want to talk to is, everyone today has a smartphone. They're always looking at their phone. It's in their hand. They expect everything to be at their fingertips. So what we've done is we launched a mobile app in the first year I was in office, 2021, because we wanted to adapt to the changing needs of our community who use mobile technology. And we wanted to improve the way we could communicate with our community. We were under COVID lockdown then, so we thought it was important. This is a way we could easily communicate with people without them coming into the office. Much of the information that is in our mobile app is also available on our website, but the mobile app just is very intuitive, easier to navigate. And as you see, there's a section for each of our offices, the Register of Wills, and for the Clerk of the Orphans Court. So if you wanted to know, how do I open a state? You can just go to this specific icon. It'll tell you all the specifics you need. If I wanted to request a marriage appointment, I can do it right online on the mobile app. And here's some more specifics for each of the areas. I can even find an attorney. We have a direct link to the Chester County Bar Association, so that you can, if you need an attorney with assistance on opening a estate for one of your loved ones, any FAQs, how to file inheritance taxes, same here, birth and death certificates, the link to the Chester County Archives and the Pennsylvania Department of Vital Records. So there's a wealth of information on our mobile app, and you can find it either in Google Play or the App Store under Chesco, Register of Wills, Orphans Court. And I encourage you to go in and download it. Some of the improvements we made in our office, I mentioned, are the appointment scheduling. It's been very helpful, people, to set. If any of you, like I did recently, had to get my license renewed and you sit in DMV, I thought to myself how wonderful it would have been if I could have scheduled an appointment in advance and know that I could be in and out of the office in 30 minutes instead of sitting there for 2 to 3 hours. So this has really been a popular way of addressing time management, not just for our customers, but for our office personnel. The virtual probates as well, the attorneys have really responded positively to this idea, as has the public, because you don't have to bring people in from out of town just to have this 30-minute appointment. And as I mentioned, one of the most popular things we have in our office are extended hours for marriage licenses. We do this on Wednesday evenings. It's the only thing we do on Wednesday evenings between 4:30 and 6:30. It's a great experience. I I volunteer to do this as well on Wednesday nights, and it's always enjoyable to see two people who talk about how, well, I didn't have to take off from work and I was able to get here and get my marriage license. So they're really thrilled. And then I mentioned some of our technology advancements like our mobile app. And next will be coming, we'll have a new case management system, which will allow us to do some electronic filings, and that'll be in the future. I want to turn things over now to my first deputy, Kate Finney, who's going to talk about our accuracy of our records and also some interesting stories that we've had here in Chester County that I think will be an interest. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks everybody for joining us today. So I was just going to speak briefly about our record keeping in the office. So not only do we keep the physical files, but our role is also to ensure that the information pertaining to those records is accurate. Previously, pre-computer, these were handwritten in books that were referenced as docket books. Obviously, now we enter that into our computer program and we're able to generate docket reports from our system. A docket book, docket report is just a fancy term for the formal record of a case. So every time a new case comes in, whether it's for the Register of Wills or for the Orphans Court, we enter all of the relevant information. That can depend on the case type, obviously, you know, from people's names and addresses and aliases to if it's a Register of Wills case, we would be including their date of death. Marriage licenses, we include occupation. Different adoption cases have different information that we enter as well. You know, a child's name prior to and after adoption, those sorts of things. In addition to that, we have to enter the description of every document and court order that's being filed into a case. I was once told by a judge that a docket report should read like a story. So the more information that we enter into that, it helps everyone involved in the case, from the judge to the court clerk to anybody who might be doing research and wanting to find out about a matter, to know what was actually going on without having to actually physically retrieve the file and read through all of that. Sometimes the docket report is enough to get the information that you need. It's also very important that our office enters this information onto the dockets in a timely manner. There are certain documents that are required to be filed in cases, and if it's not done timely, then our office also sends out notifications letting people know that that information is past due. In addition, with the Orphans Court, when we docket orders, that starts the deadline for people to appeal those orders and whatnot. So anyone I'm sure knows doing online research anywhere how valuable it is and important to have the information be as accurate as possible. It was the beginning of last year due to some online research that Michelle was contacted by a reporter from the Baltimore Banner, and they had picked up on a story online of a woman who was renovating her home in Baltimore and actually found a container of letters hidden in a wall. And so with the help of this reporter, they were reading through all the letters and piecing together a story, which ended up being a pretty steamy love triangle. This was in early 1920s that these letters were written. So the reporters actually pieced everything together, and in doing so discovered a court case that actually led back to the Chester County Orphans Court. So they were reaching out to our office to see if we were able to search by this woman's name to see if we had any record, which luckily, because of our excellent record keeping and archives, we did have the record. We actually had everything already scanned in. And so it was almost 200 pages of a file that I was able to email over to this reporter. And it turned into a story about a wealthy heiress and illegitimate child and her will, which was actually a really neat read. And they agreed to send us copies of the articles over once it was published. So I would be happy to share those with anybody that would like to read them. I had saved PDF copies. So Michelle's going to go to the next slide. My email address is there. You can reach out to me. Stacy also has copies. It's 2 articles. So if you would like a copy, it's just a really neat story, and it's neat how it all links together and links back to our archived records here in Chester County. And I think I'm turning it over to Stacy now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. We're actually going to turn right over to Maureen. She's going to share her screen, and she will start with the wills and administration files. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you. I'll share now. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kate and Michelle. And so I think you mentioned, or Michelle mentioned earlier, that probate records filed after 1923, those are held with the Register of Wills. So records filed before 1923, those are the records that are here at the archives. I also just want to quickly note that not all residents who passed in Chester County had a probate record file. The probate record process, or the probate process, was only needed for those who had enough property. So you may not see a will for everyone, but all of the wills that are filed before 1923 are here. So before I start digging into will and administration files, I just want to quickly share how you can access these records. So first, you'll need to visit the archives website at chesco.org, and then by hovering over the government tab at the top of the page, you'll be sent to our departments where archives and records is listed. You'll then be sent to our records, guides, and indexes page on our homepage listing. And here you can access all of our indexes for each collection that we have. So today, of course, we'll be focusing on our probate, estate, and guardianship records. And we'll be talking about each of these collections today, but I'll be focused on the wills and administration, and later Stacy will talk about the Orphan Court records. So you can search through these records by using our indexes. All of our indexes are organized alphabetically by name. And you can also access these records through our digitized records tab, just by clicking the links listed below. For steps on how to navigate our indexes and our digital collections site, I encourage you to watch our Guide to Digital Access tutorial video. And this video, it's on our homepage to our website and on our YouTube page. We also have a step-by-step guide on our homepage as well, which breaks down the process of how to access our records. So the earliest of our wills and administration files were filed all the way back in 1714. And as I mentioned earlier, the latest were filed in 1923. We have indexed our entire collection from 1714 to 1923, but we have not fully digitized the collection. So if you're visiting our digital collections now, you will only see wills up to 1880. And we are continuing to work our way through this collection. So if you need a will that was filed after 1880, you can call or email Stacy or me, our archivist, to request the copy. Also, before 1714, wills were filed in Philadelphia. And even after that point, even after 1714, until about the end of the Revolution, it was common for residents of Chester County to file their wills in Philadelphia. So if you do not see an early will in our collections, you may find it in the Register of Wills in the city. But we do thankfully have an index of these wills that were filed in Philadelphia in our research room. So we can easily confirm whether that will is there. So you may find a few records within a will and administration file, such as, of course, a will, along with an inventory, an account, a vendor list, a codicil, and a renunciation. When a resident died without a will, you may also see an administration bond, which authorized an administrator to settle the deceased person's estate. And each of these documents may paint an intimate picture of a person's life. They identify family members and describe the material possessions that one once owned at the time of their death. So probate records, they reveal the people and things that a deceased person once valued. So throughout this talk, you may also hear the words testate and intestate. Testate refers to someone who died with a will, while intestate refers to someone who died without a will. I'll be focusing on testate records, but later in this talk, Stacy, our head archivist, will discuss records that emerge when a resident dies intestate. So a will is a legal document that expresses how a person would like their property distributed upon death. So as an example, this is the will for William Latta, who served as a Union soldier in the Civil War. Latta, he wrote his will at a camp near Hampton, Virginia in 1863. And as in most wills, he shared what would happen to his property upon his death. He willed $4,000, a photo album, and a writing desk to his fiancée, Julia C. Smiley. He gave $1,500 to his sister, Mary, $500 to his aunts, Mary and Margaretta, and his works of poetry to his cousin, Alice Finley. While Latta's will describes the items he valued and the relatives he cared for, it also captures in intimate detail his emotional state while at war. Realizing that he would likely not survive, Latta used his will as an opportunity to say goodbye, writing, quote, "It now remains for me to say to each and all of you, my kind friends, farewell. May blessings ever attend you all, and if my blood is shed in my country's cause, pray for me that I meet you in the land where partings are unknown," end quote. Wills are often not this descriptive, but they are among the few government records that capture the voices of our ancestors. You may also identify a family's lineage between wills. So for example, Prudence Ford, Cuff King, and Jane Salmon, they were each enslaved by the Worrell family in Middletown Township. And according to their wills, which were filed between 1778 and 1779, they were also siblings. So Cuff King, he was enslaved by Peter Worrell and freed upon Worrell's death in 1772. He wrote in his will that he, quote, had been working for myself about 9 years, in which time I have acquired some small personal estate. He willed £5 to his sister Jane, and the remainder of his estate to his 3 sisters, Peggy, Prudence, and Jane. Thankfully, Jane and Prudence also had wills where they gave their property to their children, Rebecca, Charles, and Bilden, who were, of course, the nieces and nephews of Cuff. So we can start building that family tree. We also see that Prudence and Cuff maintained a relationship with their previous enslavers. In Prudence's will, she appointed Thomas Worrell as her daughter's guardian under the condition that Rebecca be brought up in a decent, sober, and orderly manner and taught to read and write. So it was clearly important to Prudence that her daughter gained an education at this point. Wills, when placed alongside maps, may also help identify where your ancestors resided. This is a map of Middletown Township from 1798, and we can see the whorls here. And this is where Prudence Cuff and Jane lived during the time of their enslavement. I also just want to note that Middletown Township is now part of Delaware County. So before Delaware County was established in 1789, this region was considered part of Chester County. So if you have a ancestor who lived or died in what is now Delaware County before 1789, you may find some of their records here at our archives. You may also see how wills capture the detail of a person's life in our project, The Last Will and Testament of Bilhah of Westtown. And this project is available on our history projects page. In 1768, Bilhah, she became the first Black woman in the county to have her will recorded. So that's definitely a project to check out. Also, through a will, you can trace land. We just had a visitor come to the archives last week, and they were looking at a property in West Nottingham Township. So we looked at our 1874 map and our 1883 map and saw that the property went from Joseph Kirk to Margaret Kirk. But there is no deed in our collections that captured this transfer. And when we searched through wills, we found a file for Joseph Kirk from 1880. In that will, he gave his home place to his daughter, Margaret, and his wife, Elizabeth. So if you are looking at a property, you don't see a deed that transfers ownership of that land, wills may have the answer. We also have will abstracts from 1714 to 1825 in our research room, which provides an overview of a will's content. Abstracts may be especially helpful for researchers trying to trace their family a generation back. Since abstracts identify those listed in a will, they may be used to identify a child listed in a parent's will. We also have abstracts from 1826 to 1855 on our website. You may also find an inventory in an administration file. An inventory was a list of personal property for a deceased person, and it not only described a person's personal possessions, but may also paint a picture of their daily lives. For example, John Knowles, he was a wealthy farmer from Ridley Township. He passed away in 1778. His inventory is especially descriptive because it is organized room by room, and his wealth afforded him and his family a plethora of goods and luxuries. Among the items listed was a bookcase with 109 volumes, a lot more than the usual, of course, and he also had a map of Philadelphia, an 8-day clock, Windsor chairs, wool cards, cutlery with iron, and flax yarn. And this inventory suggests that the Knowles family was well-read and much more educated than most. The family, along with their enslaved women, who were also listed in the inventory, they likely devoted much of their time to weaving and cooking. And the inventory, in Knowles' case, even listed where members of the residence resided. So, for instance, the bed of Pathina, who was enslaved by the Knowles, was listed in the kitchen chamber. So you really get to see how these people navigated their house at that time. So you may also find references to relatives in an inventory. This is the inventory for Moses Hepburn, who passed away in 1897. Hepburn was the first African American to be elected to the Westchester Borough Council, and he also owns the Magnolia House, a hotel in Westchester. His inventory shows that he gave money to his sisters, his brother-in-laws, and to an uncle who lived in Alexandria. You may also find an account in an administration file, and accounts are a detailed statement of a deceased person's debts and their credits. And Hepburn's account included costs for hotel maintenance, medical attention leading up to his death, and his burial at Longwood Cemetery. And legacies may also be listed here in an account. So this is another place to look at to see if any relatives are identified. Less frequently, you may find other papers in an administration file, such as a vendue list, a codicil, or a renunciation. And a vendue list is a list of goods that were sold at public sale to pay off the legacies and debts of the deceased. It often identifies the people who purchased these goods. A codicil is an addition made to the will after it was written, and a renunciation is filed when an executor declines to administer the deceased person's estate. And in most circumstances, a will and administration file includes maybe 2 or 3 of these documents. In rare cases, do these files contain all of the records that I mentioned today? So as I mentioned earlier, some of these records, such as an inventory or an account, may be in a will and administration file, even if a person dies intestate, meaning without a will. But there are additional records associated with intestate ancestors. So I'll pass it on to Stacy, who will talk about these collections.
Thank you, Maureen. I appreciate that. Give me one moment. I will share my screen. So sorry, give me one moment. There we go. And from beginning. All right, is that working? Okay,
Yep.
So thank you so much, Maureen. Here we are. As Maureen mentioned, administration papers were filed with the Register of Wills for those who died intestate. However, the probate process might continue through the Orphans Court for those who died testate or intestate. Before we look at specific records, let's begin by exploring the court itself. Pennsylvania's Orphans Court can trace its beginnings to the London Court of Orphans, and the act which created the Orphans Court specified its purpose, that care may be taken for those that are not able to take care for themselves. The name of this court often causes some confusion for researchers and raises the question, who is an orphan? At the time of the court's creation, the term orphan was used to mean fatherless. The Chester County Archives has both Orphan Court's dockets and estate files from the mid-1710s to 1923. As a general rule, the dockets will not be as detailed as the files. When looking at Orphans Court files, it's important to note that there are 2 types of files, a decedent estate file and a minor's file. Hyperlinks to Orphans Court records are co-located with the Wills and Administrations records on the Archives Probate, Estate, and Guardianship Records page. You will find indexes to both decedent estates and minor files by clicking on the Orphans Court Estates hyperlink. Under Orphans Court Estates, the records are divided into 2 time periods, 1714 to 1881 and 1881 to 1923. For the earlier time period, there is a link to the index for decedent estate files, which are searchable by the name of the person who died, and contain papers related to the estate. These papers are often duplicates of those found in the wills and administration files that Maureen discussed. There are also links to Orphans Court minors files. There we go. Then contain records related to the guardianship of a minor-aged heir of a decedent. The minors files can be searched by the name of the person who died or by the minor. By clicking on the Digitized Records tab, you see that we have digitized the Orphans Court decedent estates and the dockets. However, we're still in the process of digitizing the decedent estate records. We're up to the letter S and haven't yet started scanning the minors files. When searching for a specific Orphans Court record in the Laserfiche system, this is how you access our digitized records. The digitized decedent estate records are organized first by the first letter of the decedent's last name, then by year, then alphabetically within that year. So today, I'm going to be using William Bingham's estate to illustrate these records. So to locate William Bingham's records in the Laserfiche system, we know they were filed in 1832. So you first look for the letter B, then find the date range that encapsulates the year for which you are searching. And then you finally will click on the hyperlink. Within the digitized record, you first search for the year, and then alphabetically the names of the decedents are organized. As we have mentioned, the Orphans Court is involved in the settling of an estate, whether someone died testate or intestate. A decedent's estate includes records related to an estate settlement and is a continuation of the probate process. However, a decedent's estate may have distribution or inheritance issues to settle, and as such, it functions as a probate court. When William Bingham died intestate, his widow, Nancy, remained on the 7-acre farm and later remarried Henry Ewing. In 1844, William Bingham's oldest son, Oliver, petitioned the clerk of the judges of the Orphans Court about the inheritance from his father. Not only does this petition provide information about the original farm property, but Oliver, writing on behalf of William's children and heirs, lists the names of his siblings, as well as the names of 2 of his sister's husbands, all asking for their part in their deceased father's estate, which was comprised of the value of the 7-acre farm. Oliver Bingham's application to the Orphans Court to oversee the sale and division of real estate, his father's real estate, reveals one of the Orphans Court functions. In response to the petition, the Orphans Court ordered an inquisition, instructing the county sheriff to summon 12 men for an inquest, hence the name Inquisition, to view the land, to assess its value, and determine if it could be divided among the parties without prejudice or spoiling the whole. The Bingham farm was appraised at a value of $310. By August of 1844, Oliver Bingham sold the land to Henry Ewing, his stepfather, for the appraised value of $310. In addition to the land transaction, this deed also outlines the proceedings that occurred in the Orphans Court. On occasion, Orphans Court files might contain a draft of the property, especially when a property can be divided without spoiling the whole. And this is a sample page from our index, and the entry for John Chambers' estate shows that there's a check mark in that draft column. And here's an image of the draft that is included in John Chambers' estate file. As you can see, it identifies bounding neighbors, roads, waterways, the types of trees in the woodland, a sketch of the mansion, as well as the division of the real estate into lots 1 and 2. Not only can drafts be useful in both genealogical and property research, but as you can see from this example, they can be really fun to look at too. As described at its establishment, the Orphans Court was designed to take care of those who weren't able to take care for themselves. And one way that the Orphans Court accomplished this was to require that a bond was taken out. Orphans Court bonds ensured that an oldest son fulfilled his duties to other heirs. An Orphans Court bond documented the name of the heir, as well as others who were named as sureties, or those who financially backed the terms of the administration bond. No money actually exchanged hands here unless the terms of the bond were not met. But here we see that Oliver Bingaman, Alexander Holton, and Jacob Baker were bound to Elizabeth Bingaman for her share of the $310 from the sale of William Bingham's or Bingaman's property. This record provides some clues for researchers. First, notice the 2 spellings of the last name on this document. The last name is spelled both Bingaman and Bingham. So it may be helpful to keep this in mind as you're searching through the indexes. Also, make note of the names of the sureties because they may be friends or family. The Orphans Court also helped to protect a married woman's property rights. Before 1848, a married woman's identity and property existed under the cover of her husband, so she could not act independently from him, own property, or inherit in her own right. In 1832, Pennsylvania passed a law that outlined how to distribute estates to married women. This law allowed married women, also known as femmes covert, to make a declaration that their husband could receive money owed to them without providing security. In 1848, Pennsylvania passed the Married Woman's Property Act, which gave married women the right to own and control their own property, so the femmes covert declarations were no longer needed. If you remember, Oliver Bingham's petition to the Orphans Court listed the names of his siblings, including his 2 married sisters. Anne intermarried with John Griffith, and Margaret intermarried with William Gilbraith. On the left is Anne S. Griffith's declaration, and on the right is Margaret Galbraith's. The law also stipulated that the judge record the husband's place of residence and occupation, so that we learn that John Griffith was a house carpenter from London Grove Township, and that William Galbraith was a shoemaker from Penn Township. These declarations are important because they link married women to the estates to which they were heirs. So they're a great record group to explore if your ancestor was living in Chester County between 1832 and 1848. Guardianship is another function of Chester County's Orphans Court in the past as it continues today. Anyone under the age of 21 was considered a minor. However, children under the age of 21 but over the age of 14 could choose their own guardians. These files are not duplicates of probate records. William Bingham's Orphans Court minor file contains petitions for guardians for his children and provides some additional information for researchers. First, it was filed by Henry Ewing, in 1832, 12 years before Oliver's petition to sell the farm. Second, we see another iteration of the family name. This time, Bingham is spelled Bingman. Third, William's widow is identified as Margaret, not Nancy, and has by the time of this petition on July 31st, 1832, married Henry Ewing. We also learn that 3 of the children, Oliver, Margaretta, and Lewis, were minors under the age of 14. Finally, we see that the court appointed Alexander Holton to serve as guardian. We know from Oliver's petition that there were 6 Bingham children. So what happened to them? William Bingham's other children were all daughters, Anne, Elizabeth, and Mary, who were over the age of 14 and therefore able to make choice of a specific guardian. The outcome of the girls' petition shows that they selected Alexander Holton to be their guardian. Which begs the question, who is Alexander Holton? Maureen had mentioned that the will abstracts can be useful when searching for information. Archives staff created the will abstracts from 1826 to 1855, where we found an abstract for Thomas Holton from Lower Oxford Township. The abstract lists the names of his 8 children, including an Alexander, a Margaret, and a Nancy. We know that this Alexander Holton, the son and executor to Thomas Holton, is the same Alexander Holton mentioned in the Bingham estate because Henry Ewing is mentioned as receiving his wife's legacy. Using the process of elimination, we can determine that the name of William Bingham's widow was actually Margaret, and Nancy must have been a name used within the family to differentiate Margaret the mom with Margaret the daughter, who was later referred to as Margaretta. So Alexander Holton was the brother then of Margaret Holton Bingham Ewing and the uncle of the Bingham children. A decedent's estate may have distribution or inheritance issues to settle. Many of the decedent's estates were brought before the court to ensure that all financial duties were properly met, and this might require audits and new accounts to be filed. If we fast forward 40 years from Oliver's petition, we come to the time when both Henry and Margaret Ewing have passed away. And you can see here that the process of audits, accounts, and even probate court was utilized to settle Henry's estates. But what happens if you didn't agree with a ruling, a court ruling? Appeals were handled by the Registrar's Court. And Michele touched on this. Registrar's Court was a court comprised of the Register of Wills and judges of the Court of Common Pleas and heard appeals of decisions made by the Register of Wills. Register court papers are filed in a decedent's will or administration file. Register court indexes and dockets are important for researchers to explore because they may reveal family dynamics that are often obscured in the historical record. Pictured here is John Wilcox Odiorn, a Civil War veteran who moved from Philadelphia to Westchester in 1865 to open a photography studio. Odiorn died in October of 1866, and his administration file is one of the most drama-filled in all of the archives. This is an entry from the Register's Court docket, which shows that on December 10th, 1866, Annie I. Odiorn and David W. Odiorn came to Chester County Courthouse and appeared before the Register's Court to defend their competing claims to settle John's estate. During the trial, letters which Annie had written to John were read aloud and explicitly expressed Annie's desire to leave the marriage. In her first letter, she wrote, "I could never again endure the thought of living with you, no matter in what relation. I would sooner die than be forced to do so. I feel that I never want to see you again, and I might as well say so." End quote. By the end of the month, Chester County's Registrar's Court found in favor of David Odiorn. However, David only won the claim to settle John's estate after Annie appealed to both this Registrar's Court and eventually to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. On February 28th, David W. Odiorn filed these duplicate accounts with the Register of Wills and Orphans Court. And you can see that Annie I. Odiorn was paid $550 from the estate of John Wilcox Odiorn. In 1874, the Registrar's Court was abolished, and the court's jurisdiction was then transferred to the Orphans Court. Hopefully, this program has shown you why wills, estate, and probate records are one of the archive's most popular record groups. They can reveal relationships, residences, marriages, children, and sometimes even family drama. As Maureen mentioned, many of these records are now available remotely, but there is much more available to you if you visit. The archives is currently located in the Government Services Center in Westchester and holds over 3,500 cubic feet of original public records, of which roughly 40% has been digitized. The archives is open for walk-ins, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Please feel free to stop by, to call, or email us. If you can't visit in person, we also offer Ask an Archivist, which is a 30-minute virtual reference consultation with either Maureen or me. And if you haven't already done so, please use the chat box to ask questions. I'm going to jump back on my camera now. Maureen, have you been keeping up on any of the chat box questions?
Yes, there have no questions came through
Okay.
during the presentation, but if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to drop it now. Thank you, Janice. She just said very thorough.
A bunch of questions before. I think I was putting in links, family names I dropped in.
There was a question about Chancery records, Stacey. I think
Okay.
that's,
Oh, yep, Chancery records. So those are civil cases, and I believe those are called the court civil and/or common pleas records here in Chester County.
Yeah, I think Chancery Court is still used in Delaware.
Delaware. So they're more it's civil cases. So you would look under, in our record groups, this common pleas records. Thank you for catching that, Kathleen.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else with questions? We'll give it a moment. Okay. Well, we will end, I guess, the program. Oh, thank you, Michele. Maureen and I will be working on further programs, so keep an eye on our Facebook page, as well as our upcoming events. There's a 2025 event tab, as well as a history project. So yes, we will be getting this uploaded to the cloud, and then we'll get that saved and links sent out to everyone. If you have, as Kate had mentioned, if you'd like a PDF of the court case that she had talked about, I will certainly, we have that available. You can email us here at ccarchives@chesco.org. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending and joining us this afternoon. And I hope that you all have a safe and warm afternoon as we are fighting this cold weather. Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
I'm going to-
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.